Welcome to Nikki's Nightmares, where chilling tales come to life. In tonight's terrifying episode, we descend into one of the darkest corners of the unknown, beginning with the infamous 1969 Berkshire UFO Incident, where dozens of witnesses reported a silent craft, missing time, and alleged abductions, before moving into the chilling real-world testimony of UFO whistleblower David Grusch, who stood before Congress under oath claiming the US government operates a secret UFO recovery program involving non-human technology. And as the night deepens, we uncover 4 disturbing alien abduction and encounter cases, from vanished time and burned eyes to men taken from lonely roads and returned forever changed. Stories that blur the line between documented history and cosmic horror, leaving one question lingering in the dark. What if it's all true? If you love scary stories, paranormal encounters, UFO sightings, and true horror experiences, you're in the right place. Make sure to like, subscribe, and join me as we delve into the deep, dark, and the mysterious. The 1969 Berkshire UFO Incident. Today, Berkshire County, Massachusetts is known for rolling hills, quiet towns, and peaceful countryside, a place people escape to when they want calm. But on the night of September 1st, 1969, that calm was shattered. What happened in the Berkshires that evening would become one of the most disturbing and widely witnessed UFO encounters in American history. And more than 50 years later, it still refuses to fade. As dusk settled over the rural landscape, residents across multiple towns looked up and saw something impossible. A disc-shaped craft, glowing and silent, moved through the sky with unnatural precision, stopping abruptly, changing direction instantly, performing maneuvers no known aircraft could replicate. Some witnesses watched from their yards, others from cars stalled on lonely roads. Children and adults alike stared upward, frozen as the object drifted low, far too low to be dismissed as a star or plane. But for some, the sighting didn't end there. Several witnesses claim they didn't just see the craft, they say they were taken. Many described the same terrifying detail, a sudden stillness, as if the world itself had stopped breathing. Sounds vanished, the air felt heavy, and then nothing. Large gaps of missing time, an hour, sometimes more, gone without explanation. One of the most well-known witnesses, Thomas Reed, described the moment this way. Everything got really calm. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. There was a barometric change in pressure, dead silence. Then suddenly, an eruption of crickets and frogs, and it was over. That sudden return of sound, nature screaming back to life, has been echoed in other accounts, as if something had briefly pressed a mute button on the world. By the end of the night, it became clear this was no isolated experience. At least 40 residents spread across Berkshire County reported seeing the same object at the same time. Some were children, now adults, who still live in the area. Others immediately called the local radio station WSBS, unsure of what they'd witnessed, but certain something bizarre had just occurred. The station's general manager later confirmed the calls. People weren't claiming aliens, they weren't telling ghost stories, they were simply saying, something impossible just happened. The sheer volume of simultaneous eyewitness accounts made the Berkshire incident stand apart from countless other UFO reports. Too many people saw too much, across too wide an area, to easily dismiss. Decades later, the case gained official recognition. The Great Barrington Historical Society reviewed the testimonies and evidence and formally acknowledged the event as the first off-world or UFO case in US history. A stunning declaration, one that legitimized the experiences of those who had been quietly carrying this story for most of their lives. To honor the encounter, witnesses formed UFO Monument Park, Inc., erecting a monument near the site. The memorial was even signed by the governor of Massachusetts, but not everyone wanted the past remembered. Local opposition grew, arguments erupted, and in 2019, 50 years after the incident, the monument was removed, reigniting tension between officials and those who believed the truth was being buried once again. Yet removing stone doesn't erase memory. For the people who stood beneath that silent craft, for those who lost time, for those who still remember the sudden hush of the night, the Berkshire UFO incident never ended. Because whatever came to the Berkshires in 1969 didn't just pass through the sky. It left something behind, and sometimes the most terrifying stories aren't the ones we imagine. They're the ones too many people remember. The UFO whistleblower. In June of 2023, a name most people had never heard suddenly echoed across the world. David Grusch, a former intelligence officer, a decorated veteran, a man who claimed he knew something that humanity was never meant to hear. Grusch stepped forward with allegations that felt less like political testimony and more like the opening lines of a cosmic horror story. He publicly stated that high-ranking officials had informed him the United States government operates a deeply classified UFO recovery program, one that has existed for decades, hidden far beyond public view. According to those briefings, the program didn't just recover unidentified craft, it recovered non-human spacecraft, and worse, dead pilots. The claims ignited global fascination, fear, and speculation almost overnight. But this wasn't a late-night radio interview or an anonymous internet post. 1 month later, Grusch carried those same words into one of the most powerful rooms in the world. Congress. In July 2023, David Grusch testified under oath before the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. With cameras rolling and history watching, he described a multi-decade program focused on the retrieval and reverse engineering of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. A program he said existed entirely outside proper congressional oversight. A program he was denied access to despite his role investigating UAPs for the government itself. Grusch didn't speak in wild speculation. He spoke carefully, deliberately, always pausing, measuring every word, because much of what he claimed, he said, was still locked behind classified walls. During the hearing, he went further. He stated that the US government has been engaged in an active cover-up for nearly a century. That information has been deliberately withheld from elected officials and from the public. And most chilling of all, he claimed personal knowledge of individuals who were harmed or injured as a result of efforts to conceal the truth. What exactly happened to those people? He could not say. Not publicly. Grusch was not alone that day. Seated beside him were 2 former US Navy fighter pilots, men whose credibility rests not on rumors, but on radar data, flight logs, and first-hand encounters. Ryan Graves testified that he observed UAP activity off the Atlantic coast nearly every day for years during his service, objects that defied known physics, objects that pilots were quietly told not to question. David Fravor recounted a 2004 encounter that has since become infamous. While on a training mission, he came face to face with an object that outperformed his fighter jet with ease. No visible propulsion, no control surfaces, no explanation. Fravor told Congress plainly that the technology they encountered was far superior to anything the US military possessed. As for Grusch, he explained that his decision to become a whistleblower came after what he called concerning reports from multiple current and former members of the military and intelligence community. individuals he described as highly credentialed, respected, and trusted. These sources, he said, provided compelling evidence, photographs, official documentation, and classified oral testimony. Not rumors, evidence. In 2022, Grusch filed a formal whistleblower complaint with the Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General. He followed the rules. He used official channels. He sought permission to share classified information with the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. This was not the act of a reckless man chasing attention. It was the act of someone who believed the truth was too dangerous to remain buried. Claims of government UFO cover-ups are nothing new. They've haunted American culture for generations, whispered in the shadows of Roswell, Area 51, and classified hangars that officially do not exist. But in the last 6 years, something has changed. The conversation has moved out of the shadows and into the halls of power. Whether David Grusch's allegations will ultimately be proven true remains uncertain. But one thing is undeniable. A well-respected intelligence officer stood before Congress under oath and claimed that humanity's greatest secret may already be in government hands. And if he's right, the question isn't, are we alone? It's, how long have they known? And what did it cost to keep us in the dark? Alien abductions and encounters. The deputy on the road. Most alien encounter stories begin with ordinary people, but this one begins with a badge, a patrol car, and a man trained to observe reality as it is. In the early morning hours of August 26, 1979, Minnesota Sheriff's Deputy Val Johnson was on routine patrol along a lonely rural road in Marshall County. The night was quiet, empty, the kind of silence that makes every mile stretch longer than the last. Then he saw it, a glowing sphere of light, no more than a foot across, hovering just above the road ahead of him. Johnson slowed. He approached cautiously. The light didn't move, it didn't flicker, it simply waited. And then, nothing. The next thing Deputy Johnson remembered was sitting in his patrol car, off the road, his windshield cracked, his head pounding, his eyes burning. When he radioed in, he realized something was wrong. Nearly 30 minutes had vanished from his memory. Later examination revealed strange burns around his eyes, as if they'd been exposed to intense light. His wristwatch was slow. So was the clock on his dashboard, both lagging 14 minutes behind real time. No skid marks explained the crash, no medical condition explained the burns, and no memory filled the missing half hour. Johnson never claimed aliens took him. He never embellished the story. In fact, he resisted speculation entirely. He said only this: "It's unexplainable and will remain so. I'm happy with my mental stability, but the road remembers, and whatever hovered there that night never explained itself." The Pascagoula abduction. On October 11, 1973, Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson did what they'd done many times before. After work, they went fishing along the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. The shipyard around them was abandoned, rusted metal, still water, a setting already heavy with decay. As the sun dipped low, Parker noticed something strange, a blue glow rippling across the river's surface. When he looked up, he saw the source, a hovering craft, silent, bright, close. Before either man could run, 3 beings emerged. They weren't monsters, but they weren't human either. Grey, strange, moving with purpose. According to Parker, the beings floated the men into the craft without words. Inside, they were examined, prodded, studied, like specimens. Then, just as suddenly as it began, they were returned to the pier. The craft rose, The blue light vanished. Shaking and terrified, the men went straight to police. What followed only deepened the mystery. They passed sobriety tests, they passed polygraphs, and while Hickson spoke openly, giving interviews and lectures, Parker withdrew completely. He was haunted. For years, Parker avoided the subject. He moved, changed jobs, tried to forget. The fear followed him anyway. Some encounters create storytellers, others leave behind survivors. The man who vanished for 5 days. In 1975, a 7-man logging crew was driving through the forest near Snowflake, Arizona, when they saw something impossible hovering among the trees. A craft, metallic, silent. Against better judgment, Travis Walton stepped closer. A blue beam struck him. The others panicked. They fled, convinced they'd just watched their friend die. But Travis didn't die. He disappeared. For nearly 5 days, search parties scoured the forest. His family prepared for the worst. Then he reappeared, disoriented, terrified, and nearly 10 pounds lighter, at a gas station miles away. When he finally spoke, his story was chilling. Walton claimed he woke inside the craft. He described beings that looked almost human, dressed in what resembled work coveralls. He recalled panic, confusion, and moments where he believed he would never return. At one point, he saw outside the craft, stars in every direction, no earth, no sun, nothing familiar. What makes Walton's case different isn't just the story. It's the 6 witnesses who saw him struck by the light, and the fact that, decades later, his account remains largely unchanged. No escalation, no theatrics, just memory. The lawyer who remembered too much. Terry Lovelace lived a life that inspired trust. Air Force veteran, law degree, work with the state attorney general, a family man. Then a routine medical scan changed everything. Doctors discovered a small piece of metal embedded deep in Lovelace's knee. He'd never had surgery, never been wounded in combat. He had no memory of how it got there. That discovery unlocked something else. Nightmares, phobias, fragments of memory that didn't belong to dreams. Through investigation and regression, Lovelace began recalling encounters stretching back to childhood, but one stood out above all others. At Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas, Lovelace and a friend camped atop a rock overlook. That night they were taken, a craft, experiments, fear beyond words. Years later, Lovelace and his friend compared memories. They matched, 2 men, 1 night, the same nightmare. The story ends here, but the terror does not. Join me again. Like, comment, and subscribe if you dare.